All right, guys. So I'm just going to introduce myself real quick. My name is Paula. I'm a former Miami Ad School student. I'm a photographer, videographer, storyteller, podcaster. I do a little bit of everything. And I'm the host of what we're calling the Nomad Talks for Miami Ad School. So we have one new guest every 2 weeks. So first of all, I want to thank you guys for joining and being with us tonight. And let you know that we have a speaker 2 weeks from now. So definitely keep checking in and see who's our next speaker, because we're really happy to bring great content to you guys. The second information is we will be taking questions like throughout the chat. You don't have to wait until the end. So, and we definitely want to make this as interactive and fun as possible. So keep sending your questions in on the chat and we'll try to get to them as quickly as possible. And I think that's it as far as information. So I'm going to start by introducing our guest, who is the other person here with the camera open. He's right here on my screen. His name, I'm going to do a quick bio just to introduce you. So his name is Marcelo Dzialoszynski. He's Brazilian. He was a marketing manager for 5 years, but decided, as in his words, to come to the fun side of the force. And that was in 2017. So since then, he attended Miami Ad School. He won so many awards. I'm not even going to read them. You guys can check his portfolio. He interned in New York and is now living and working in New York at Mediacom New York, where he is a creative force behind a brand that he already loved as a kid, which is Pokemon. And you can see by his background.
Yes.
He is also the creator of a YouTube channel where he gives tips on how foreign creatives can land a job in the US, and he interviews creatives working around the world. So today, welcome. Thank you so much for being here tonight on Thanksgiving. I know you're in the US, so thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Paula. So happy to be here. I was really happy when you guys invited me. Miami Ad School was definitely one of the best decisions I did in my whole life. Helped me so much on landing a job here in the US. And well, I watched the other two Nomad Talks with Camila and Frank. They were amazing. So I hope I entertain and I help everyone as much as possible, because they set the bar way too high. But it's really good, really nice to be here today, and thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's get right into it, because we have a lot of cool content. I'm gonna put your information too in the chat so people can look at your portfolio and your Instagram and your YouTube. But the theme of tonight then is how to land a job as a creative in New York. And I'm sure that a lot of students and people who work in creativity, it's sort of their end goal or sort of their milestone goal to like live and work in New York, right? So I think for you, I just kind of want to take it back a little bit and have a chicken and the egg sort of question. Like, what started first? Did you have this dream of living in New York, for forever, or did it sort of come about with the exposure that you had at school? Like, walk me to the beginning of this dream, if you can.
Yeah, so I always dreamed to live and to work in the US. Like, since I was a kid, my mom and my dad took me to Disneyland when I was very small, and like, oh my God, I love this country. I love the culture. I love everything. And when I was at university, I had a chance to do an exchange program at the University of Texas at Austin. And it just increased my love for the US, and not just for the US, but to have an international career. I always thought, okay, I want to live in other countries. I want to know other cultures. So even before I came to the advertising world, as you mentioned, I started my career actually with working at logistics, which has nothing to do with advertising.
Doesn't sound creative, yeah.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with me. Let me try to change to marketing. And then I changed, and I was always thinking, okay, this is temporary. I'm working in Brazil, but I really want to work in other places. I want to work in the US. Eventually, I decided to change career. So I took a step back, started to learn advertising, to study, right? And then I found out that Miami Ad School had this amazing program called Quarter Away, that basically your last 3 quarters, so your last 9 months in the school, you can stay 3 months in one country, 3 months in another, 3 months in another, always doing internships in different places, and also studying in different schools from Miami Ad School. So I said, oh my God, this is really good. This is a very nice and powerful way to start your international career. So then I said, okay, this is the time. Now is the moment to try that. So I went doing my quarter away already in mind. Okay, I want to land a job after the quarter away. I don't want to just stay there for 3 months. And but it always sounded to me really, really hard. Everyone was telling me, oh, it's super hard, you need a visa. But then I saw Miami Ad School ad on Facebook, a paid ad that was actually Camila Ciapina, the previous speaker, where she was saying, hi, I always like, I'm Camila, I'm a former student, and I always dreamed to come to the US. And thanks to Miami, I was able to. So I said, okay, so someone managed to do that.
Someone made it.
So it's not impossible. So I said, okay, let me try that. But so definitely the quarter away helped a lot, but there's a lot of other things that you need to know and you need to do. Even if you don't do a quarter away, it's totally feasible. You just need to know exactly what you need to do, what are the requirements. And that's actually the reason that I started my YouTube channel, which is called Publicidade na Gringa, where I teach people how I landed my job here and how they can do the same thing.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, like you did it relatively quickly, you know, if that transition in your career was in 2017, you said,
yeah, right? Exactly.
It's 3 years later and you're there. So that's a pretty impressive time. Yeah.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about these internships in New York, because this is something that I think is super interesting about the school, even though just a FYI, I went to Miami Ad School, but I did digital photography and video. So I didn't have the exact path that the advertisers have at the school. But I was looking in one of your works in your portfolio, for example, that you had, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, interned at Gray in Brazil, and then you were able to intern at Gray in New York. Is that correct?
Yes. So I started, so when I was at Miami on my first year in Miami Ad School, I had the opportunity to do this agency lab in Gray, Brazil. And by then I did a really good project there. It's called the Mach 3 trial. That like I was just an intern, but what was great about Gray Brazil is that they were so open to everyone. Everyone, if you have a good idea, they're going to listen and they will try to sell it. So that was really, really nice. And this work that I created when I was an intern there, it ended up participating in what they call the Creative Council Brazil. So it was elected like one of the 2 best ideas in the whole semester there. So, and then it went to the Global Council, which is like basically all Grays in the world evaluating the work from all the places. And I mean, we didn't won, we were not first place, but we were there, we were among the finalists. And what was really nice was that when I went to Gray, New York for my quarter away, they already knew my work there. So
you
like
were famous.
Yeah, well, you can say that. So it was cool. Like when I was showing my book to them, I said, oh, I remember this. Like I saw that, and that put me in a different level. Like they started to look at me more like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. Like he's a creative rather than just an intern. But yeah, just to tell you all the places that I've interned through Miami, I started Gray, Brazil. Then I went to Gray, New York. Basically because I always wanted to come to New York, and I was okay, I'm having such a great time at Gray, Brazil. I'll probably have a great time in Gray, New York. And it was also really good. Like now Gray apparently is not going to exist anymore because they're merging with the KQA. But
yeah, I was reading about that this week.
Yes, but I think both, I mean, it's 2 different worlds that will come together. Then I went to Facebook Creative Shop in Hamburg, which was also another dream that I had, like to work in Facebook. I was like, oh my God, they're offering like the chance to work at Facebook. Like that's my dream. So I went there, I worked for 3 months, and then I came back to the US to work at AKQA San Francisco. So I worked there for 3 months. Also really nice experience. But then I graduated from Miami, and that was like, okay, now I don't have Miami to back me up on this. So I need, now it's my turn.
Because Miami Ad School, like it opens a lot of doors, but then at a certain point, it's like, it's up to us to kind of stay there.
Yeah. I always say that for people who are considering to do Miami Ad School or any other portfolio schools, like, this is a tool, but in the end, it's up to you. Like, you need to drive that tool and to make the most out of it, right? So actually, my last quarter in San Francisco, the only class that I took was one called How to Get a Job, which is really great because basically they teach you all the different things about looking for a creative job in the US, which is very different than what happens in Brazil. And I can assume that is different than what's happening in Argentina, in Chile, in Mexico. So
every market is so different, right?
Yes. So what happened is, like, after I graduated, I had a ticket to go back to Brazil, but I said, okay, I'm gonna take 2 months. 2 months. No, that would be way too much. 2 weeks to stay in, to show my work around in New York. So before I went back to Brazil, say, okay, I'm gonna show my work around, and then on this 2 weeks, I was able to receive an offer from Mediacom, and here I am. Like, I go through all the process.
2 weeks. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. But again, so I always say that there's two versions. There's the version that I say, oh, I went, stayed 2 weeks, and then I landed a job. That's the La La Land version, like, that is super easy. The truth is, like, was the work for a whole year, right? Because, like, when I first went to Gray, New York, I said, okay, I need to know everything, and I need to prepare for when I graduate. I have all the tools. I know exactly what I need to do, and that's what helped me to be able to land. Like, so I landed
to make it in
the job
2 weeks.
Yeah, in 2 weeks. But to be honest with you, the offer was the first meeting that I had, which is just a coincidence, of course. Like, so the first meeting that I had in New York ended up being the one that allowed me to work here. Was the one with Mediacom, and they offered the job, and, like, that was really great. Also because I was like, oof, okay, I have 2 weeks to just show my book, improve my network, and yeah. So that's basically it.
Yeah, but I think it's very cool that you say that like, really it was 1 year in the making. It was
exactly
step by step and gathering all that information so that when the time comes, you know exactly what to do and how to do it. And, like, okay, now you don't have time to think, you just have time to act.
Exactly. Yeah. And, like, once you receive, even after you receive an offer, there's so many steps that you need to, like, to go through, that you can't allow yourself to, like, oh, I'm gonna learn on the go. You need to be prepared for that. So, for example, I have a video on my channel that is, like, the 5 steps to land a job in the US.
I'm gonna put it on the chat now for people to watch it later.
But as I was thinking, I would actually add, and we can go through the steps here, but I would add step number 0. That is exactly what we are doing here. That is, like, gather information, learn
100%.
everything.
Learning from other people's experiences, for sure.
Exactly. So, for example, my first time in New York, I was already showing my book, and I knew I was not able to land a job by then because I had more time, like, I still had, like, 6 months of Miami Ad School, but it was really good. Like, I started to know people, so when I came back, they already knew me. That helped a lot. And another thing that was good, for example, one person that I talked to was Marina Beldi, who is also a teacher at Miami, New York. And what was really great is that she introduced me to the O1 visa, which is basically the visa that you should aim if you're in the advertising world. So there are a lot of different working visas that I have some familiarity with all of them, but the O1 visa is definitely the one that you should aim if you're, like, the regular Brazilian, Argentinian, Chilean ad guy, because it's very focused on your work, on your awards, on your recognitions, which is something that we are very privileged for our work, you know, because like for a lawyer, for a business guy, they don't have a profession that has like award shows. So it's way harder to prove that you're
A
extraordinary
great
alien,
lawyer, yeah.
which is how they call. So the O1 visa, it's funny the name, but it's extraordinary aliens, which is, or people with extraordinary abilities. So yeah,
it's the Justin Bieber visa, for those of you who don't know. That
yes.
was Justin Bieber's first visa.
Yes, exactly.
I actually want to read something here from Luciano. He said, "Thanks, Marcelo. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I graduated in international trade and freight forwarding, worked in the logistics industry for 7 years, and now decided to make this career shift to communications." So before we kind of go on into the more like logistical part of moving to New York, let's say, can you like walk it back a little bit and just kind of talk about that moment, like that transition,
Sure.
that you know, that shift, like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. I love to tell the story actually. So thank you, Luciana, for your question. So basically, so as I mentioned, my first job was at logistics, basically because like I graduated in business administration. And in business, you learn a lot of different things. You learn finance, you learn logistics, you learn marketing. And by then, based on the classes, I said, oh, I kind of like logistics. Like it sounds exciting, it's interesting. It's a little bit of humanities and a little bit of the exact sciences. But when I started working, I said, okay, no, this is not what I imagined. And I started working at P&G or Procter and Gamble, which is like the basically the enterprise that is behind Gillette, Pampers, Pantene, all these amazing brands. And they're also like the guys that invented marketing. So there, when I was at town halls or meetings, I always noticed, oh my God, like marketing, like they have like from a meeting of 2 hours, they have like 1 hour and a half. And then the logistics guy has like 10 minutes. And I say, oh my God, marketing is amazing. So I managed to transition to marketing. But I thought, and I think a lot of people that don't work in marketing or in advertising thinks that marketing is like propaganda, creating commercials, and you're the creative guy. No, you're not. The truth is like, you're the guy that is briefing people to create your campaigns. But more than that, at first this was fine. Like for me, oh, it's cool. I'm gonna have some talks with people, with the agencies. I'm gonna approve. I'm gonna reject. That's fun. But the more that you grow in the marketing career, you start not looking at communication that much, and you start looking at other things in marketing. So you start talking with sales, start talking with finance, start talking with logistics, and I was like, oh my God. I'm not liking this. Like the more I was progressing, the less I was paying attention to. Like I was spending time with creative agencies, but so I was already seeing, oh, maybe I should change career. I don't know. But then there was this one day that I think was like the click. You know, that was basically Facebook, like the brand, the enterprise. They invited P&G for a challenge, which each brand had to come up with like a very innovative idea, creative idea on how to do advertising Facebook in a new way. And they would fund the whole campaign. And like for a marketing guy, it's like, oh my God, free money. Like that's the best thing that I ever wanted, because you're evaluated by like money, basically. So I talked with my boss and we arranged a meeting with White & Kennedy, Brazil, which is the brand for Old Spice, the agency for Old Spice, which was the brand that I was doing. So they were also super excited. So we had one full day brainstorm at White & Kennedy. And I said, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, I want to have this job. Like at first you think like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have this job? But I said, well, why can't I? So I called a friend from Agência África, which, well, for those of you who don't know, is like one of the biggest agencies in Brazil. And asked, how can I change? Do I need to go to university again or something? I said, no. a lot of people in the ad industry doesn't even have a diploma. What you need is a portfolio. So you should go to a portfolio school. And then I started considering, okay, so I'm not that old. I'm not that young also, but I'm not that old. I'm not married. I was single, actually. I'm still single, by the way, but I didn't have kids. So I said, okay, now's the time. I need to try that. So I quit my job. I made an agreement with my boss so I could leave with some money. I took 1 month traveling in Japan, which was like something that I always wanted to do, but I never had the time. And then I came back and started working on my portfolio. And I eventually landed a job at Publicis Brazil. And was like, oh my God, that's so cool. I had my first project in like executed. But eventually I said, okay, this is fine, but it's really hard to produce things when you're starting in the career. And I was also thinking, oh, there's a lot of people with awards that helps them like to get the best jobs. So I need to know more about creativity. I need to win awards. So that's when I said, okay, I need to do I need to go to Miami Ad School, and that will help me. And that was definitely one of the best decisions ever, because like, as you mentioned, like I won so many awards. I was able to work in so many places. It opened so many doors. And at the same time, I built a network with some of the best names in creativity, you know? So like right now I'm interviewing a lot of people on my channel that like are big names in the industry, but the first ones are also big names, but big names that I knew because I went to Miami. So yes, so I guess even let's disconsider Miami at one point here, but I think the key is like, it's never too late. We had Frank in the first Miami talk. He was vice president of a bank. Like,
yeah, and I think he was like 30 something,
exactly.
35 when he started Miami Ad School.
And there's there's nothing to be ashamed. I think that's the first thing. And two, you can use that as an advantage. You know, you understand more, you have some understanding of other things. And for example, my previous experience as a client definitely helped me because I know like what's to be in the other side.
Yeah, I was just going to say
good.
that. I was going to say that like most people tend to think that, you know, changing things every certain number of years is going to put you at a disadvantage. But I feel like now, and I'm 35 now. So now I can kind of like look back and see where the dots connected and what at the time I felt, oh, this is not going to serve me any purpose. And then it serves me a purpose. And so like things do end up making sense.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be this sort of like linear, you know, I studied this in college, so I worked with this, and then that's not really how life is for most of us, I would say.
Yes.
Nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, which is amazing from the time that we are living, you know, like
we have that
then,
like freedom.
It's like you go to one job and you stay there forever. Now it's actually funny because I had that mentality when I entered P&G. I was like, okay, I'm going to stay here forever. And now, to be honest, I want to have, of course, like talking long term, I think I want to work in a lot of different places in my life. I want to work in different countries, in different cities. I want to work with different brands. And that's just amazing that we can do this nowadays.
Sure. Let's take a question here from Barbara. Thank you for sending it, Barbara. She said that she's studying advertising right now. And she's still in the second semester. So I'm assuming you're quite youngish, college. Let us know here. So can you give any advice for those who are starting at this market? And I think I'm going to add a layer to that, which is, you know, there's the general advice, and then there's the advice of what's going on right now in the world. Like you being in New York, maybe you can offer sort of a different perspective of what's going on in the market, like with COVID and everything. I don't know if it changes somehow how you think.
Yes,
but
I think so. One general advice that I have, and I think a lot of people don't consider this, and it's normal because like we are still learning when we are at school, is that make the most of your time there, you know? So for example, when I started Miami Ad School, I saw a lot of people not submitting work to awards. And that was too late, you know, like, because you only have two years. In college, you have 4 years, but still you only have this 4 years. And the sooner you start doing that, it's an exercise. The more you try, the more you get faster. It's faster to get better, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's that thing of like fail faster.
Exactly.
Because you learn from your mistakes. It's like just try and see how it goes, you know?
Exactly. Like the first award that I submitted, my ideas were really bad. But then you start learning what's working, what's not. Another advice that I would say is like, look at the portfolios of people that you want to work with. So you learn what they're thinking, what they're considering, and considering and because you mentioned like this whole new normal situation, I think just consider that there are people that are open to talk to you, you know. So, and this is already creating an invitation. Like, if anyone wants to talk to me after this talk, also, I'm totally open. So, especially now that we don't need to go to a cafe, like to Starbucks to talk, we can just have a Zoom. Like,
I already put your Instagram. I already put your Instagram handle on the chat, so they'll be able to stalk you all they want.
Yes, feel free. Yeah, LinkedIn, also Facebook, YouTube channel, also please subscribe. Anyway, okay, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Barbara. If there's anything else, send it here too, okay? And yeah, she says she's 23, so yeah, she's pretty young.
Yeah, you're so young. Yeah.
Yeah, you have so much time, girl. So much time. But like, just go for it. I think I you know, what we were saying in the beginning, the step 0 is even like believing that you can do it, and even having that dream and talking to people, learning from their experiences and seeing if you think that would be a right fit for you. So sometimes, you know, you have to think out of the box and just go for it.
Exactly.
So Leonardo Azevedo wants to know who your friend in Africa, in Agência Africa was. He's just curious.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's Anderson Vieira. He's a great copywriter. We had the chance to, so actually like, we went to UT Austin during my exchange program during university. That's where I met him. And like, he's such a great guy. I actually had the chance to interview him on my channel. So also, if everyone wants to look at his interview, I also invite you. He's a great guy. He's one of the most funny guys that I know. Like, lots of laughs. So yeah.
Awesome. Erika wants to know, what's the difference between working in an agency in Sao Paulo and New York?
So a lot of differences. The main one I would say is, so there's no lunchtime here. So because I love
that's so true.
Because I love to eat. There was one day that my first day at Great New York, I said, okay, at what time is lunch? Because you want to know, like, if it's like at noon, at 1, and I said, whenever you want.
Yeah, like, and in Brazil, it's a cultural thing to go out to lunch with your coworkers. Actually, I remember seeing someone from Peru here. She can tell us if it's the same in Peru, but I imagine it is.
So So basically in Brazil, we call mini vacations because it's 2 hours long lunch. It's like, and in the US, it's like you just go and grab something and you get back to work. And that, I try to have a break, but that's one difference. The other one, you have way more meetings here in the US. There's a real process to the madness here. In Brazil, it's not freestyle, sorry, but it's more like you come up with ideas and then you present to your CD. Come up with more ideas, present to your CD, and that's it. Here, you have a lot of check-ins with project managers. That's another whole difference. There's a project manager, someone like who's making sure all the deadlines are met. So that's another big difference. And another one that I think it's interesting is that in Brazil, I think we focus a little bit more time crafting the idea before presenting. So here, for example, at a KQA San Francisco, sometimes I would present an idea with like a GIF. You know, I just grab a GIF. No one opens Photoshop on that. Like, some agencies opens, of course, some places, some projects. But some ideas I would just be like, oh, here's like my idea, and there's a GIF of Pikachu dancing, for example, you know? Yeah. So that's one big difference, 3 big differences, I would say.
Yeah. I've lived and worked in both cities, and I agree. Like, even though Sao Paulo is a huge city too, New York just feels like also more like competitive. I don't know if you feel that, Marcelo, if it's just me, but
Yeah,
it feels a bit more competitive in New York. Like everyone's just like, you know, because there's people from all over the world that are trying to work there. So, you know, it also adds a layer of excitement too, you know, because there's always something new going on. So
yeah. Well, and another thing that I think is cool to mention is like, because you're in the US, the chances of working with the best directors, with the best brands, like this is very exciting, you know. Like I won't say names, but I was reviewing some directors for a TV copy that I'm working on, and I'm like, oh my god, is this guy actually being considered? Like, we can pay for him because like it's in dollars. That's amazing, you know. So that's another thing that is really, really cool.
That's so cool. All right, so let's get back to your channel until someone sends in another question. So we can kind of like go through the steps. First of all, let's talk a little bit about your channel. For those of you who don't know, he has this channel called Publicitários na Gringa, which is, I guess, advertisers abroad on YouTube.
Ad men abroad. Exactly.
Yeah. And where are the women in this? No, just kidding.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm joking.
I didn't mean that.
I'm joking. So then basically he kind of like walks you guys through, you know, everything from the visa process to, for example, the last video I saw, I think, was related to food, because it is tough, you know, you're in a new city.
Yeah, how to not get
like
fat
how do you, and also how to eat on a budget, right? Like you don't want to spend, because if you're not careful in New York, you'll spend all your money on food alone and rent, right? So
exactly.
So tell everyone a little bit about the channel so they can get familiar with it.
Publicitário na Gringa. Well, I always I love the YouTube platform. I really like to spend some time there, and I also like to create. And I think it's very important for people in advertising to have their personal projects if it's something that they like. So when I first started living living in the US is very different than like staying for like a couple of weeks,
vacation, or
so I started to have a lot of doubts, and I was looking on YouTube for answers, and I couldn't find them. So I said, okay, what if there was a channel? So I started to answer a lot of questions. So I started to make this video. So I have some videos of like how to qualify for the visa, how to write an email to get an interview, how to look for work, a lot of different things. And I also have all these interviews. So yeah, that's basically it. So we have videos every Monday. Every Monday is a tip. So like, for example, how to get a better in English, or like, do you need to be that good in English or not? I answered these questions. And every Friday I have a guest that tells his own story related to working abroad or like studying abroad. For example, for those of you who don't speak Portuguese, there's actually an interview in English with Hatem Alkad, who is like an Egyptian that just landed a job here in the US, and he's the most awarded ad student in the world. So really great guy. I encourage you guys to watch that. What else? Oh yeah, another thing that I think is worth mentioning is like most of the videos are based on questions that people drop in the comments.
So it's really like a very organic process in terms of the content.
Yes, totally. Like my job there is like to help people. So if anyone has a question that eventually is not answered here, feel free to drop a comment there, and I will be more than happy to not just to answer, but to make a whole video about that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's get back to that like 5-step list that you had. Is it okay if I post it in the chat so people see the whole list?
Yes.
I translated the one you sent to me. So step 0 from what you mentioned was like gathering info, talking to people, studying the process, which is kind of what we're doing now, and people can Google and, you know, network. And so step 1 would be adjusting your portfolio for the American market. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, let me go through the 5 steps here. So first is adjusting to the US market. And this is separate in 2 different layers, you know. So one layer is like the quality of your work, which is like what you would do in any place. The only advice on this specific part is like, know what's your differential, like what's your strength. So for example, if you're a copywriter in Brazil, I would probably have like a lot of headlines, long copies. That was not the case when I was looking here. I was focusing on like having the most creative ideas, like so case studies, boards of like very big ideas. Because in the end, if they want someone that writes really well, they will hire like an American, and they don't need to sponsor a visa and things like that. So focus on having really, really great ideas. That's something that I think it's super important. But at the same time, if you're art director, Brazilian art directors are known for having amazing craft. So you should also focus on that. That's also something that is important. But then is the real adjustments on like what people are looking for. So first adjustment that sounds very basic, but it's super important is like have all your work and the whole book translated to English. And I know it sounds like that's obvious, but a lot of people like, I don't have time to adjust this board or this print, like have everything. Because if they don't understand what you're saying, they will just skip, right? The second part, the second adjustment is to have a link to your CV. So usually in Latin America, people just like they look at your book and they call you and like, oh, do you want to schedule an interview or something like that? In the US, there's a process because in the US, it's not the creative director who hires you, it's a recruiter. So this is a profession that needs a hard copy or like at least a digital copy of like a Word document, a PDF of your CV. So that's the second thing. The third one that I was going to mention is that you should, so sorry, I had a mental stop here. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Another thing is like, don't put your, So in Brazil, it's very common to have infinite scroll. So basically all your work in one page. In the US, people don't understand that. Like when I show my book like that, it's like, where's your work? They want to have like a page that can see everything. So you should have thumbnails, So I hope everyone understand what's a thumbnail. If not, I'm more than happy to look at my portfolio. It has thumbnails. So like it's a button for each project. So that's the step number one. Step number two is to send 1,000 emails to every single person in the US, because like a lot of them will not reply to you. That's just true, because like they have a lot of things to do. So a lot of people will not reply to you. But how do you get the contact of all these people, right? There's 3 strategies that I use. First one is related to Miami Ed School, but you don't need to be at Miami Ed School to use it. I went to Miami Ed School Facebook page, and basically they have a lot of videos that are called the Industry Hero Talks. So every week they have, I don't know how it's working during COVID, but every week during classes, they have one really good guest, like one amazing person in advertising that gives us a talk, and they broadcast live on their Facebook. Even if you're not watching live, the fact that they're going to school and that they're talking to students, that says something, right? That says that they're open to to find people that are different. So I sent emails to all of them, to every single speaker. One of them was my boss, Benjamin, who, so in the end, like that was one thing. Second one is LinkedIn, of course, like don't be shy. It's not awkward. Like LinkedIn, the rules are different. You are allowed to add people and message them. That's
true.
Why
it is a business networking platform. So
you're there to make network. So that's fine. And the third part that is connected to other two, every time you have an interview, ask for more contacts, ask for references, and they will give you more people to talk to. And then it starts, like a virtual cycle, because you're talking to someone who will give you another contact, and then out of a sudden you have a whole network.
Well, that's cool. I would never have thought that. I would have thought that it would have been awkward, like if you're in an interview with someone and you're like, oh, refer me to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. But so it's really good that you're saying that, because that's the thing. I never went to an interview asking for a job. That's not what I do, because people just get in defensive. Like, I don't have a spot for you here. The way that I position this is, hi, I'm a Brazilian.
Let's chat.
I always said I would like to stay in the US, so I want to have feedback on my work. All the interviews or like the chats were not to land a job, was to learn from them and to build a network. And then naturally you will get an offer, to be honest. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but the easiest way to land a job is not to try that hard to like, oh, please give me a job. That's just intimidating, which is, I guess, the same with dating, like you wouldn't say, oh, please date me. Like, you create a relationship, which was the same thing. I went to my interview with Benjamin, who's my boss, and like, I just said, can you give me some tips on my work? And then he said, oh my God, your work is pretty good. Would you be interested in working here? So I guess that's super important. Like, and then it even gives you another great advantage of this is like, because some people will say, oh, I can't sponsor a visa, so don't talk to me. I won't be able to sponsor you. Or like, we don't have a spot. But if you say, no, that's fine. You don't need to hire me. I don't want necessarily to be hired. I want help. I want to learn. That's such a great way to start talking and learning from people. And then you have what we were saying. They can reference you to other people in other agencies. So that's basically it.
That's so cool. No, yeah, that sounds like a great organic strategy. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, honestly, even in Brazil, I used to do that. Like, I would never say, like, during the interview, you can mention, oh, so I'm looking for a job, but don't start by asking for a job. It's very hard for people to be like, okay, let me proactively interview someone. So then we go to step number 3. So you landed an offer. Yay, amazing. That's not the end. Like, there's a whole lot of things that you need to do, which is qualify for the visa, right? So once you receive the offer, they will put you in contact with the lawyers that will assess, okay, what's the best visa for you, right? And then I'm going to talk specifically of my visa, okay? That is the O1 visa. I know about the other ones, so I can talk offline with people. But basically, so they will access they basically need to prove that you're an extraordinary alien, right? The way that you prove that is through awards, of course, because if you win an award, that tells something about you, right? The second one is recommendation letters. So like, I had to talk to every single person that I worked in the industry. Like, I talk with CCOs, I talk with directors, I talk with teachers, and all of them helped me with a supporting letter that was saying, okay, I worked with this person and this is why he's amazing. That's why the US should admit this person to work there, because he can actually help the country. He can contribute to the national advertising. And then another one that we have, another one is publications. So like, that your work has been put in some places. Published, exactly. So for example, one thing that,
and also in your own country, I think this is important to say too, because they want to see your published work not only in the US, but that like you're a published you're an asset in your own country.
Exactly.
And a lot of people tend to forget that, and they just try to get published in the US. But no,
it's great that you said that. I didn't have any publication in the US by then. All the publications that I had was in Brazil. But that's also a very important tip. Like, advertise your work. So for example, when I create one of the works that I had on my book was a chatbot that I created. And I could just had a chatbot. I turned my portfolio into a chatbot. And that could be the end. But I sent to Clube de Criação, which is kind of the ad age in Brazil, and said, oh, I have this project. I think it will be cool if you guys talk about it. And I said, oh, this is super cool. And then I got a publication. So like, don't wait for things. You need to advertise your work, and the same thing for awards. So you can't just say, oh, I won an award. They need all the certificates. So that's another thing that you can start doing right now. Call or email all the award shows and saying, oh, can you give me a certificate? And then they email you that certificate, and that's it. After that, they will submit that. It's like a 200-page thing to the US government. And then after 2 weeks, they said, okay, you're approved. And then you have like the last part that is like, you're still having a heart attack. That is like going to the US, it's not consulate, in Brazil.
Embassy,
Embassy, to do the interview, which is very standard. Actually, it's not that hard. Like they will just check if you are you, and that's it. But then you get to the US and you still need to do some stuff. You need to get your Social Security. Without that, you can't get paid. So first thing that you do when you land from the plane in the US, go to a Social Security office and get that. And another thing that you need is to start building your credit score. Because without that, you can't get a credit card. You can't have good rates for your rent. So there's a whole world that you need to start working on, which I actually cover a lot in my videos. So if anyone is more interested in knowing about this, you can look at the videos. But yeah, those are the 5 steps to land a job here in the US, I would say.
Amazing. So let's get to some questions. So Luciano, it said, I'm going to read it to you. Let's bring the elephant in the room. How much should you expect to make in Sao Paulo and or in New York as a junior? And in what city do you get more bang for your buck, as in the cost of living versus the salary?
Okay. Yeah. So actually, the starting salary was also something that I considered when I said, okay, I want to go to the US, because the truth is, so if you're a really good professional in Brazil in advertising, you will get very well paid, but the starting salaries are kind of low. I'm not gonna lie. Like in Brazil, it's really hard to on your first job to have a really good salary. And I mean, it varies, but like I would say it's way lower than here in the US. So in the US, I would say like the starting salary for someone who haven't worked but has like a good portfolio would be annual salary. Okay, 65,000. That's a pretty good salary for someone who never worked, which is around 5,000. Yeah, 5,000 per month. But that's gross salary. Then you need to take all the taxes. Which in the US, which in New York is 30%. So like then it gets a lot of your. But yeah, so just answering your question, I think that in the US you get more money starting at a junior position at first.
Cool. So Krishna is asking, let's see, is she next? Yes, Krishna. Do you think as an advertiser it's important to learn Portuguese? I know English and Spanish, but I want to pick a language that would help me in the future.
That's curious. I never heard anyone ask me that. So I think it's important if you want to work in Brazil, to be honest, because so basically with English you're covered basically in any place. Of course, if you know the language of each place, it's better. But the only exception is if you, and I'm quoting a friend here, if you work at David Miami, David the agency, because it's an agency in the US, but they have so many Brazilians that my friend actually mentioned, oh, they're always talking in Portuguese. So I'm starting to learn that. So that's the only exception. I would say like if you know English and Spanish, you're more than covered, definitely.
Yeah, I would say also it's like it really depends on the person's objective. Like, oh, if it's my dream to work in the Asian market, I don't know. So then like, let's say what would be the best language to speak to get into the Asian market or to get into this, I think,
But that's also good. One thing that you mentioned is like Brazil is not a country that have a lot of people from other places, Most people are Brazilians because we don't have a department that speaks in English. People do speak in English, but we don't work as a daily basis. It's different than, for example, Germany. Germany people speak in English in the, like in the office. That's not the same thing in Brazil. So if you want to work in Brazil, you should learn Portuguese because not a lot of agencies will accept people who don't speak, but
Yeah,
that's the only case.
Luciano is saying something in the chat. He said the thing about Portuguese is that you have to learn the nuances, the jokes and things like that. A lot of things get lost in translation in Portuguese, and that's very
Yes.
true. Brazil has a lot of advertising that's geared towards like jokes or inside jokes or things that are very cultural.
Yeah, but I think that's the same for any language, you know? So
Yeah,
even here in the US, like one thing is learning at school, but you only learn the real English when you're living, you know, like when you're, because then you start knowing the slangs, the thing, because like one thing is the English that you'll see at Netflix. They adapt that. So like everyone can learn. But the English when you're talking to someone is totally different.
Yeah, I feel like advertising in the US, it's so many puns. They love wordplay and puns. And I just remember when I lived in New York, reading on the subway, all the different puns and everything. So that kind of takes a while too.
That's true. Yeah, and it's the opposite in Brazil. In Brazil, like
we never use puns. It's
kind of cheesy. Like that's the first thing that you hear. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to get to, I think, one of the last questions. I can't believe time flew by. We're like almost done.
It was so fast.
I know. And I still want to get one more question in. So but this is a very important question that she's asking, I think. There's always someone that asks in the chat, like a more sort of personal question, which I think is super important. She says, I'm just going to read it to you. She says, I miss getting to know the personal details about the journey that was landing your dream job. Would you share the dark sides of your story? Fears, insecurities, what made you go on? I know it's a very subjective question, but I think that the emotional intelligence is just as important as having fine skills and talent. That is such a great question because I know so many people that moved to New York and they couldn't take it and they left, which is fine. Each person has their own journey, right? But so go ahead.
Yes, that's a really great question. So actually, yes, it is very stressful, you know, like, so for example, when I started Gray New York, I was like, oh my God, I need to make the best work in my life so they will hire me. But at the same time, you're still an intern. They won't give you the best briefs, you know. So at the same time, what I would say is like, you will get stressed, but you need just to think like, trust the process, you know, like don't kill yourself. If you don't land a job at this exact moment, it's not the end of the world, you know. That's not the end of the world. So that's one thing. But then, for example, another part that is very stressful is when you first get your offer, you know. So you get the offer and it's like, oh my God, I'm so close. But you still need to be approved by the US government. And that's so stressful because like, it's not a sure thing, you know. You can be a great professional and they can reject you. That can happen. It's kind of subjective. But and also, for example, you need to get all the recommendation letters. So you start, and it's very awkward. Like, how do you ask people to write amazing things about you, and they have so many other things to do? So that's also something that I remember. I was talking with my parents, always like, oh my God, he's not replying to me. I'm not gonna get this. But when they replied, it was like, yes, thank God. But yeah, so it's very, very stressful. But again, I also think like, if you don't land the job at that specific moment, it's not the end of the world, you know.
And it doesn't mean anything too, because we tend to attach meaning. You know, if I didn't get that job, it means that you didn't get that job. Done. Next.
And I think especially when you're starting, you think like the place that you are is the only place. So since we're talking about dark stories, one thing that I think it's cool to say, I actually got fired from an agency in Brazil at the start, and I was, oh my God, I got fired, I suck, like I'll never get another job again. And it ended up being the best thing that happened to me, because if I was not fired, I would just stay there and I would not have the opportunity to go abroad and land an amazing job here in the US. So like, everything that happens to you, it's not the end of the world, and you need to make the most out of it. I know it sounds a cliche, but it's so true. Like, once you admit, okay, things can go wrong, and that's not the end of the world, it just takes a lot of pressure from your shoulders.
Yeah.
I hope I answered the question. again, like if your question was not answered here, feel free to send me an email. We can chat or leave in the comment section of my channel, and I will be more than happy to answer.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. Like Marcelo's like the coolest, nicest guy you guys will meet. So definitely, like he means that when he says it. And kind of hearing you speak, I just it seems to me like having a support system is so important in the process. So maybe that helps, you know, throughout, because you know you had your parents to kind of like lean on and talk about when you were feeling insecure, when you were feeling nervous. So I think part of this process, because there's always going to be stress, like Marcelo was saying, it's always going to be, there's going to be aspects of it that is going to be stressful, and that's okay. So I think having a support system and people that you can call when you're feeling that, and like, okay, I just need to get this off my chest, blah. And other people who have done it before, you know, to talk to those people to kind of keep you going.
Yeah, so, exactly. So even, for example, hearing Camila from People in Portfolio was also super good. Because her first experience in the US was also like, oh, I got a job, but then they don't understand my visa. So like, it's not the perfect world. There will be times that you will fail, and that's so normal. Like people don't talk that much about that, but like failure is part of the process.
For sure. And actually, just for a quick, we have like 2 minutes left, but I wanted to bring this case that you guys can look on his portfolio, but I believe it was the anti-waste label, I think, since we're talking about failures. You did mention that you submitted the work for an award show a specific year, and you were like, no, for sure, we're going to win. And it wasn't even shortlisted, but then you resubmitted, I think, the following year to a different award show. And then you were...
Exactly. Saying very, very fast here. Basically, I created this work for DNAD, and like me and my teacher were like, oh my God, that's the most amazing thing we've ever done. We're gonna win this award, blah, blah. And then when they announced the winners, was like, okay, you're not even the shortlist. But we said, no, this is a great idea. Like it needs to win something. So we submitted to Cannes, to Future Lions, and then we were one of the only Brazilian works to be on the shortlist. And that just proves like sometimes
you need to believe in yourself sometimes.
And who knows, like just, for example, you don't know who's the jury, what they're evaluating, who you're competing with. There's so many variables that can like at one moment can look like as a failure. And then later on it's like, oh my God, this is great. And again, just sorry, I know we're over time, but like, for example,
don't worry.
Because we're talking so much about awards, it might feel like, oh, if I don't have an award, I'm not a great professional. And that's definitely not true. The only thing about awards is that they will help you land a job because they're a certificate. But I know so many amazing people who never won a Lion, and they're amazing. It's just like that specific work didn't got awarded at that time. But that doesn't mean that they're not good. They're really, really great people. So yeah, I mean, try to do your best, and that's good enough, to be honest. Like do your best. And one last advice that I think is very important. A lot of people say, oh, we need amazing craft, blah, blah, blah. But I believe poorly done is better than not done at all. So for example, my channel started poor camera, poor audio, poor everything. But if I hadn't started, I would never have started, and I would never get better. So like, don't wait. It's very important. Don't wait. Just go. You will learn during the journey, you know?